Hello my fellow crochet gremlins, it's time to make your yarn stash a little bit smaller. In this video we're going to be making the wing for the phoenix. For this wing you're going to need some orange, some yellow, red, and black, all in 5-weight yarn, and some worsted weight of really any color, but I prefer to use like an orange, like a dark orange, so it blends in just a little bit better. We're going to start with the red. Oh, and you will also need, obviously, scissors, a couple stitch markers, and a yarn needle. And the stitch markers are an absolute must, or at least something to mark a couple stitches. So to start, you're going to want to leave a little bit of a longer tail and make a slip knot. And we'll be working with a 6mm hook. Start by chaining 13. Then, starting in the second chain from the hook, we're going to do 12 single crochets back down the chain. And then at the end, we're going to chain 1 and turn, and we're going to do 12 more single crochets back along our initial 12, but in the front loop only. Now we'll chain 1 and turn again, and we're going to do 12 increases, again in the front loops only. And then we're going to chain 1 and turn, And we're going to do 24 single crochets in the front loop only. And on this row, it will be helpful to use your stitch markers and mark your first and last stitches. Okay. And there is the base portion of our wing. Now this part looks a lot bigger because we're going to scrunch this down using the worsted weight yarn later. For this wing, this one goes on the right side of the phoenix. So for this wing, when we did the red piece, we'll work in the back loops of this row to do the orange feathers and the front loops to do the yellow feathers. So since this one is going to be on the left side, we're going to do it the opposite way. We're going to work in the front loops for the orange feathers and the back loops for the yellow feathers. So now we need to grab our orange yarn. And instead of chaining one with the red, we will chain one with the orange so we can do a color change. And then we're going to take our stitch marker and we're going to move it from being in the full stitch to just being in that back loop. I guess technically this is now the front loop since we turned. So we'll be working in the loop behind it. So technically now this is the back loop. So I said that backwards. And we'll kind of tighten our red and orange at the ends here. And we're going to do a single crochet into that first stitch. And then we're going to chain 8. And then we're going to switch to black. There's a lot of color changes in these first few feathers. We're going to switch to black and chain 4 more times. After we've done our chain 8 in the orange, then we'll switch to black. And we will chain another 4. And then starting the second chain from the hook, we will do a slip stitch, and then a single crochet, and then we will switch back to orange, and we will do a half double crochet, and then another half double crochet, two double crochets, three half double crochets, and then two single crochets. And then we will go into our next stitch, and we will do a slip stitch, and then we'll do a single crochet in the next one, and then we will repeat the exact same pattern for the next two feathers. So we'll have three feathers that are exactly the same. The chain 8 in orange, chain 4 in black, slip stitch, single crochet, two half double crochets, two double crochets, three half double crochets, two single crochets, and then slip stitch, single crochet. Okay, now that we have all three of our black tipped feathers done, we can move on to the next feathers, which are significantly easier because there are no more color changes at the tips of the feathers. And if you're anything like me, yours is probably a mess right now because you did not cut any of your extra tails. So let's go ahead and do that and move our extra yarn out of the way. This red tail back here from where we started, we do not need. We will still need our red for more feathers, but we don't need it right this minute. Okay, that's a little bit better. So continuing for our next feather, we're going to do the same pattern as our first three feathers, but with just the orange. So we're going to chain 12, and we're going to do a slip stitch, single crochet, two half double crochets, two double crochets, three half double crochets, and two single crochets. And then with every feather, we'll do in our next stitch a slip stitch, and then the next stitch a single crochet.
Mommy, who was going to watch?
After we've done our first all orange feather, the same as our first three black tipped feathers, the next three feathers will all be this next pattern. We will chain 10, And then we'll do a slip stitch, a single crochet, 1 half double crochet, 2 double crochets, 2 half double crochets, and 2 single crochets. And then our slip stitch and single crochet. And so we'll repeat this pattern for the next 2 feathers. So it's a slip stitch, single crochet, 1 half double crochet, 2 double crochets, 2 half double crochets, and 2 single crochets. After we've completed our 3 orange of the same chain 10 pattern, then our next 2 will be the same pattern but 1 orange and 1 in red. So for these 2, we're going to chain 8, and then we're going to do a slip stitch, a single crochet, 1 half double crochet, 2 double crochets, 1 half double crochet, and 1 single crochet. And then we will slip stitch in orange, and then we're going to switch in our single crochet back to our red. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll chain 8, slip stitch, single crochet, 1 half double crochet, 2 double crochets, 1 half double crochet, and 1 single crochet. Now that we've completed our orange and red of the chain 8 pattern, our next 2 will be the same pattern as well. In red, we're going to do a chain 6, then we're going to do a slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, 1 double crochet, 1 half double crochet, and then we're just going to go into the next one, slip stitch, single crochet, and chain 6 again and repeat. So chain 6, slip stitch, single crochet, 1 half double crochet, 1 double crochet, and 1 half double crochet. And then slip stitch. And in our final stitch, we're going to make sure we mark that front loop and then the back loop if I can find it. Maybe. Okay, now that I'm done struggling, in our last stitch, we'll do a single crochet, and then we're going to chain 4. We're going to do a slip stitch. Apparently I'm not done struggling. A single crochet and a half double crochet. And then we're going to slip stitch right back into that same stitch that we started in. And then that is it for our feathers. I know they look wonky and chaotic right now, but we're going to fix that, I promise. I should say that is it for our back feathers. We still have to do the front feathers. So now you can cut your tails as long or short as you would like them to be. I usually leave a couple inches because I do not weave in my ends. And I will show you what I do instead of weaving in my ends. Now, if you want to weave in your ends, you can go ahead and skip past this part, but if you don't like weaving in ends, here is a quick tip. So trim your yarn tails just a little bit so they're about the same size. I'm using our color change tails from when we went from orange to red, and just peel off all these fuzzies. Now this only works with chenille yarn. I'm not sure if this would work with like blanket yarn, and obviously it will not work with worsted weight yarns, so if you're using those yarns, unfortunately you still probably have to weave in your ends, but if you're using chenille, this is a nice little hack. Does it save time? I don't know, but it saves stress, at least for me, and I feel like it is a little bit more secure. Obviously sometimes they're gonna get stuck, that's okay. You really only need this part right here to be clear. So if you can get all of it away from the very end, then that's okay. And yes, my floor is absolutely covered in all of these little fuzzies, which is why I vacuum daily. But in my opinion, it is so worth it to not have to weave in ends, especially when you're doing something like this where you have a ton of color changes. And it works especially well for like these black color changes at the end, because if you do it here and tie them super tight, then you can't even see these, and it makes it so much easier because there's not really any room to weave in your ends up there. So once you have these, you're just going to tie them together. I usually do like 3 knots, and you're just going to tie them super tight. Not so tight that you break the yarn, but tight enough that they kind of hide in the stitches. And then if your scissors are nice and sharp, you can get really close and cut. Mine are not super sharp, so I couldn't get super close. So you can still see mine a little bit, but if you can get closer, then you can cut them. But the nice thing about this is we are going to go through this back part here with the worsted weight yarn to kind of scrunch it all up and to make these feathers stay together. So this is going to just disappear anyway. So that is a good way to not have to weave in your ends and to be able to hide all these tails. Okay, now that I have all of my ends except for these two, because I'm going to use these for sewing later, I have all my ends tied off. Now it's time to make the yellow front feathers after a quick monster break. And I'm curious, so if you also drink White Monster, leave a comment and let me know, because I'm curious how many other crocheters drink White Monster. Or any other of the zero sugar monsters, because I feel like that's a popular crocheter thing. So now we're going to start with our yellow. We don't need the orange or red anymore for the wing. We're going to make a slip knot. And we're going to be working in either front loops or back loops. I'm not really sure what they are anymore. I think they're the front loops. So we're going to go into our first one. And we're going to do, maybe, we're going to do a single crochet, a double crochet, chain one, double crochet, and a single crochet, all in that same one. And that'll make kind of our first little feather. And then in the next loop, we'll do a slip stitch, so we can kind of space these out a little bit so it's not quite so tight. And then we'll just repeat the same thing all the way down. So single crochet, double crochet, chain one, double crochet, single crochet, and then slip stitch in the next one. And so we'll just repeat that all the way down until the end where our next stitch marker is, and then that will complete all of our feathers. Okay, so I'm at the end of my row here. Doing my last feather. Oh, I think I went into the same stitch on accident. Yep, I did. These last couple stitches can be kind of tricky because they're getting tighter together. And I just did a half double crochet instead of a double crochet. I am struggling today. And then in our very last stitch, we'll do a slip stitch. And we'll just cut the yarn. And then there is all of our feathers. I know, it looks very wonky right now. I promise we're gonna fix it. If I could get it to actually lay out, it would be nice. We have all of our feathers nice and pretty. You can kind of stretch them out a little bit to get them to lay a little bit more flat and not curl at the ends so much. It's usually just the longer ones that like to curl up at the end, especially with the black color changes, because those stitches are just a little bit tighter because we're doing color changes and trying to keep our stitches tight there. But now is when we're going to use our yarn needle and our worsted weight yarn. Brief intermission while I untangle this. Successfully untangled. Now, I showed you the wrong needle. You're going to want, if the video will focus, you're going to want a metal smaller yarn needle for worsted weight. The bigger plastic ones will work, but in my experience these metal ones are just a little bit better if the yarn cooperates. They're just a little bit better for working with worsted weight yarn, and they tend to get in between stitches a little bit easier. So we're going to flip our wing over onto the back. And it doesn't matter which side you start in, I just like to start in the top and work my way down. So I'm going to start up here, and I'm just going to go in through a couple stitches right here in the side, and I'm going to pull in a very, very long string, because then I'm going to use it to connect my feathers. So for connecting my feathers, I'm just going to go through one little loop from the feather that I want to be in front, and then go through a loop in the feather I want to be in back. And I'm just doing one loop from each as the back loops, if I can find them, and I'm just going to tighten those up. And I'm going to go up until there's about 3 or 4 loops left for each feather, or for whichever feather is the longest, for when we get to the feathers where they have different sizes. You don't have to make these super tight, but if you make them tighter, then these stitches here aren't as visible. But that's also why we're using worsted weight. You can just use the same color that you used for the feathers if you want to, and that would make it completely invisible. But in my experience, sewing with chenille is kind of a nightmare. So then after you sew up your feather, and you will just go through a couple of these loops. You want to make sure you're not going right back through the same loops that you just went through for that last stitch, but you'll go through and weave it back down. And this is why I say the metal one is better, because it can get in between these stitches a little bit easier, versus the plastic one would have a little bit harder time getting through these and would get stuck easier. So we'll sew back down. And then we'll go through a couple stitches here at the bottom to get over to the next feather. And then same thing going up the next feather. I'm going to go through the back loops and go up until there's about 3 or 4 stitches left in each feather. And if you can hear my children in the background, I'm sorry. They don't know how to be quiet. We've tried to teach them inside voices, but they just don't understand what that means. And once you get all of the stitches in, you can also kind of hold it like this and pull, and it helps to hide them. So if you just hold it right here and pull, it hides them very, very well, because it pulls the whole string super tight. And so then when you look at the front, then you can't see it. On this side, I didn't do that, so you can see one of the stitches right there. But on this side, other than my final stitch right here, which you won't be able to see once I go down, you can't see them. And this will bring all your feathers together and help them kind of stay put and not move around so much and not be floppy. So just do that through all of your feathers all the way down, and then I will meet you back down here. Okay, I have come to the end of all of my feathers. They are all attached. So once you get to this point, then you're going to go through to the other side. And our yellow feathers are going to be kind of all over the place now. So we're going to kind of bring them down a little bit too and secure them. So what you're going to do is you're just going to go through like 1 or 2 back loops and then just come back down through like 1 or 2 of the red stitches on the bottom, and then back up through 1 or 2 stitches or back loops of the yellow, and then back down. This is where the plastic needle might come in handy because they're a bit longer, so you can get more at a time. Otherwise, with the metal needle, you kind of have to do just a couple at a time. But then you just kind of, that'll just bring them down a little bit and keep them more secure. So just do that all the way across, and then I will meet you back here for the final sewing part. Okay, once you get to the end here of the yellow, then you're going to kind of cinch it. So to get them to actually lay down and bring our wing in a little bit so that it looks more like this one, we're going to kind of just pull. And we don't want to pull super, super tight. You can kind of play around with it a little bit, you know, scoot the other feathers down so that way they're kind of more evened out and not just all cinched up in one spot. And then just pull with it, play around with it, and move them around until you like how they're sitting. I like that. I think that that looks nice and it matches my other wing fairly well. But then here, my last yellow feather is kind of sticking out a little bit. So I'm just going to grab this loop right here and sew it to this red loop in the back. Just to kind of bring it in a little bit and make it all nice and tight. And then for our final sewing piece for this, which if you have ran out of your long piece, you can just cut another long piece from the other side of the tail where we started, because we'll have to do that anyway to bring it to the other side. So now for the final piece is going to be cinching the red. So our red piece here is still quite a bit bigger than the red piece here. So we're going to be cinching it, and we're going to also be taking this top row where the chain is, and we're going to be folding it down and sewing it in. So we're going to take this, fold that in, and we're going to try to go through just the back loops so that our stitches don't show on the other side. And you're just going to kind of weave it in and out, go down through one chain, grab a back loop, and go up through the next chain, and then go down through a chain, grab a back loop, and go up through the next chain. And just repeat that all the way down. Obviously, if you are using a metal hook, it's going to be a little shorter, so you're going to have to do it in sections. With a plastic hook, you might be able to do the whole thing. And you want to make sure you're sewing it at about the same spot, so that way it doesn't have different thicknesses. So So make sure you're sewing to the same row consistently. Okay, so I am at the end here, pulling through my last bit. So I have my chain sewn on, and I'm going to do the same thing as with the yellow. I'm going to kind of pull it tight just to cinch that red in a little bit until it's about the same size as my other one and to where I want it to be. And this serves two purposes. It brings it all together a little bit better, and it also helps to make the wing stiff. So that way you don't have to use pipe cleaners or wire to be able to hold it up when you sew it on. Now, mine isn't quite stiff enough, it's still a little floppy, so I'm going to go back through this a couple more times to use up the rest of my tail, just to make it a little stiffer. And then that is how you finish off your wing. And then you'll cut this tail, and you'll weave it through to this side, and then you'll have four, you can tie off your yellow tails. You'll have four tails, the two red and the two worsted weight, that you can use for sewing to the body. And that's how you make your phoenix wing. Now you should have both of your completed phoenix wings. And you can tell if they're sturdy enough if you can turn them upside down and they don't flop. When you hold them right side up, they're going to flop a little bit, but when you hold them straight up, they should be fine. And they'll be sewn onto the phoenix being straight up. So now they are ready to be attached to our phoenix.